As we head towards the end of 2024, a lot of people are open to looking at their health in a different way. Either what they've been doing is not working any longer, or there have been recent events that allow people to be a bit more open minded when it comes to how they view their health. Today, I have on the Evolving Wellness podcast my really good friend, Meredith, who runs the Quantum Biology Collective. Now, that is actually the place I did my training back in 2021 when I was just beginning to study quantum biology and circadian biology. Since then, I've gone through the board certification that is now offered by the American Naturopathic Medical Board and the Quantum Biology Collective. And I highly recommend it to anyone who is thinking of taking the leap to become a practitioner, or maybe just wants to understand this information on a deeper level and access a community that really gets it. Now, this conversation is a little bit different than most of my episodes because we really go deep into health and different health paradigms that people are seeing shattered right now due to recent events. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And if you're interested in learning more about the Quantum Biology Collective, head down to the show notes. There is a link that will take you to the website. If you are a practitioner who wants to expand your knowledge base and understand how we look at health through the lens of quantum biology and circadian biology, or just a regular person who wants to understand this information on a deeper level. All right, I hope you enjoy today's episode with my good friend, Meredith. If you've been listening to the show for the last few years, you know I'm a huge fan of red light therapy. There are over 10,000 studies now in publication showing the health benefits of red light therapy. And there is a lot of research showing how red light therapy can help to improve skin health. I have been on the fence about trying one of the red light therapy face masks, and I've definitely been waiting to find one that uses the specific frequencies that actually show improvement with skin health. 630 nanometers for red and 850 nanometers for near infrared. And Bond Charge checks off all of those boxes. So I've been trying this mask out for the last month and I absolutely love it. It's super lightweight. It does not make your face sweat and it's very simple to use. All you need is 10 minutes. You can actually use my code Sarah Kleiner, all one word, to save 15% off at Bond Charge. You can use it on any of their products, but I really, really like their red light therapy face mask. And I think it's something that's worth a try if you're looking to naturally improve your skin health. So check it out. Again, use code Sarah Kleiner, all one word, to save 15% over at Bond Charge. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you might know that I'm not a huge fan of taking handfuls of supplements. But She Legit is something that I see in a different category, and it's something I've been playing around with for the last couple of years. Now, if you've never heard of She Legit before, it is a tar like substance that is found in high altitudes and is heavily regarded in traditional Ayurvedic medicine for several things. When you get She Legit, you have to be careful where you source it from because you want it to be third party tested for things like mold and heavy metals. That is why I'm a huge fan of Black Lotus She Legit and their products. They're a small family company and stand behind everything they do and third party test everything. I've personally been taking their 200 milligram She Legit tablets and absolutely feel a big difference in my energy, cognitive function, mood, and even my sleep. Check out Black Lotus Shilajit and use code Sarah K to save 15% off everything on their website. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, my really dear friend Meredith and I are going to talk. We're going to post this on both of our platforms. So, Evolving Wellness as well as the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. So, what are we talking about today, Meredith?
All the things. I feel like there's so much going on right now, on the micro level, on the macro level. Change is in the air, um, and it's messy.
Mhm. Very. We were just talking before we turned on the recording. You know, I made the mistake of checking the comments on I had Facebook decides what goes viral and what doesn't. Same with Instagram, but Facebook took a post of mine. It's got over 500,000 views in about 48 hours.
Oh
I
gosh.
didn't. I didn't know. I didn't know. I just was checking some of my notifications and I was like, oh, whoa, whoa. Because the level of I'm committed to my way of thinking and I can't think outside of the box is just like, I think it's worse, you
Yeah.
know, right now in particular, like you said, there's a lot of change in the air. And I think people are really clinging to old behaviors, old beliefs. They're more committed to, I'm sure my producer will put a little explicit on this one, but they're committed to their own bullshit. And it's like
Yeah.
getting people out of that. I don't think there's much we can do. And you and I think the same way. It's more attraction rather than promotion. You know, my family members, I love them dearly, but they don't want to listen to me because when I tell them things, it's going to make them do things that are drastically different than what they're doing now. They're very addicted to the comfort of their own pain and they're committed to staying in that cycle. And I think that's where a lot of people are. So what can we do?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the grounds are shifting. And when the grounds are shifting, we feel unstable. And when we feel unstable, exactly as you just said, like we cling harder to what
Mhm.
we know to be true.
Yeah.
And as evidence comes up that asks us to question that, right? Like we can't until we feel safe. And if the change is so fast, it's hard to feel safe, right? Like so it's a really interesting time. And I think that, for people who listen to your podcast or my podcast, you all listening to this, right? Like you are leaders,
Mhm.
even if it feels like nobody, in your personal life or, there may or may not be people who seek you out, just to be that voice when someone's like, oh, fluoride in the water, what is that crap, right? It's like, well, actually, there's quite a lot of research, like just to be the calm voice of
Mhm.
sanity that
Mhm.
lays out a one sentence and holds the
Calmly.
space, yeah,
Yeah.
calmly and holds the space for the person to like work through their stuff
Hmm.
and leave them with an experience of like, oh, well, that person's not freaking out and they mentioned something. And maybe it lands, maybe it doesn't. But we are in the middle, it's like there's so many different names being thrown around now. There's like the fourth turning or the flippening or the great awakening or planetary shift in consciousness. It's whatever, you know, you resonate with. But there's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff happening. And so if we can be those voices of calm and reason and hold the space and have our safe places and our friends where we where we can vent and be annoyed,
Yeah.
right? But like move out in the world and just
Hmm.
be like, yeah, it's okay. I think if enough of us do that, we
Hmm.
can maybe smooth out the messiness of this shift because it's a lot. There's a lot going on.
A whole lot. And there's a lot of fear, like you said, when people are afraid, they cling even more to the ground that they're currently on. And that's definitely happening right now. People are digging their heels in even more. And unfortunately, in my experience for me, I never made changes until I was in a significant amount of pain.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, I think a lot of people are getting to that level of pain where they're like, okay, it's time for me to change. It's time for me to make a shift here. Uh, I'd rather be in pain in a positive way than staying here in this negative space. And so I do think it's important for those of us who have made these changes and are living a different way than we maybe once were before to, like you said, hold space and be able to communicate in a clear and calm way. Because I never wanted to hear from people who were fanatic or coming at me or talking down to me. And I see so much of that now, online, especially of people just talking down and being mean. And it's like, yeah, no one wants to hear that. No one wants to be talked to or treated that way. And there's a great opportunity, I think, that we have to really support people and be compassionate and understanding through a lot of these big changes. So yeah, it's a good time to really evaluate this for yourself, um, and be open for those around you.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this a bit too, because just in the last couple of weeks, there's been so many, topics that we talk about all the time, like whether it's fluoride in the water or
Mhm.
glyphosate or, non-native EMFs causing harm, that were very firmly in the camp of like fringe
Yes.
weirdness.
Yeah.
And my son came home from school last week and he was like, Mom, the kids in school are talking about all the weird stuff you're always talking about, like fluoride. And then he paused. He's like, I mean, they're making fun of it, but still, they're actually talking about it. I've never heard anyone talk about fluoride before,
Wow.
right? So these topics are entering into
Mhm.
the consciousness. And so even if they're being brought through legacy media in a way that's like not necessarily giving them the fair treatment that they deserve or really looking
Mhm.
at the research in an unbiased way, they're still bringing these topics in. And I've been thinking about it. I'm like, I guess it probably is a lot to swallow for someone who has not considered these things before. It's like, okay, like fluoride, glyphosate, Wi-Fi, artificial light at night, and
Seed
like people,
oils.
yeah, seed oils. Like people have no framework for how
Mm-mm.
those things can be bad. So I was
Mm-mm.
thinking about it, and I was like, when we were younger, or maybe even, in the generation before us, what was a paradigm that they held that they really thought was true that turns out totally wasn't, right? And there was the one of the paradigm that I remember, was the idea that the human brain has a window of development, and you got to put in all your learning during that window. And once the window's closed, that's it. Your brain is done. And you live the
Mm.
rest of your life with whatever you put in during the window. And now, with the concept of neuroplasticity, right? Like we know that that is completely false. But I was
Mhm.
thinking about it and I thought, like, what if you were talking to someone who lived in that old paradigm where the brain only has a certain window to develop and then it's over? And you walked up and you said to them, oh, if you want to help your parents not get dementia, you should have them do crosswords and make sure they have a robust social life. It would be like, that advice sounds insane. And then you'd say, oh no, but there's studies. And they'd be like, okay, I guess, right? But if you started the conversation with, by the way, everything we knew about the brain is wrong. Neuroplasticity
Right.
exists. The brain keeps developing. It needs to be fed for our entire lives, not just a window at the beginning. And then you said, oh, and crossword puzzles and socializing help stave off dementia. It's like now they have a framework, right? Like it's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, I see how that can make sense. And
Mhm.
so I feel like we're in this place where the new paradigm exists and we know what it is. You and I know, the people listening to our podcast know.
Yeah,
But
I do.
we're still looking at all these little tips, broken, compartmentalized, and nobody else has a framework. Like there's no shelf to put them on. It's like, what? So that's what I've been thinking, and how to lead with the paradigm. I guess it's up to us.
Mhm. Yeah, I really feel like it is. And I think that people listening to your podcast, my podcast, they're at that place. They've adopted this new paradigm, this new way of thinking, but they're probably like me, my whole family isn't there, you know.
Yeah.
Our views are different. Our values are different, and it's tough because I got here through a lot of pain, through I rejected the allopathic medical paradigm 16 years ago when I saw my child have a severe brain injury from this paradigm. And now, all these years later, it's being acknowledged that this was actually a thing. But for 16 years, I had so many people, oh, that didn't really happen. That's not real. That's that's what you think happened. All of these things have been said to me in varying ways. Now things are coming out. They're coming out. Uh and I had been going through this experience for the last 16 years, yet my own family members are so ingrained in this programming that's out there that they have continued to rely on this system for their children and their families. And it's like, whew, we're up against a lot of programming and a lot of people kind of just been wanting to be told what to do. But like I said, you know, times are changing. I think people are becoming more open. And one of the things that I think is going to really explode in 2025 is more people interested in this paradigm and more people looking for educators and a calm voice to communicate this information. I think that there are going to be more and more people open. I don't know. Don't do you think so as well?
Yes, I absolutely think so. And I think, to that comparison I was making about, neuroplasticity, the idea of, the intersection of physics and biology, the idea that there's a different way to look at human health. And people are getting there because,
Mhm.
for practitioners, what they were trained in is no longer working. And
Right.
most of them, the ones, I think most practitioners are really intuitive people. And
Hmm.
that's why they were drawn to
To
do
help.
this kind of work.
Hmm.
And they've been sensing over time that, as our modern environment has changed, they've been sensing that something is off and they are looking for a way to explain that. And that's, what's his name? Kuhn, Kuhn. He studied sort of what is required for a paradigm shift to happen, right? And it's like when the so-called anomalies pile up, right? The evidence that doesn't make sense in the current framework, when the stack of that evidence gets high enough, people become willing to consider a new framework. And the joke is that you need to wait for everyone who believes in the old one to die. But I think we live in a new world and we don't have to wait. We can make that shift and create, it's almost like parallel dimensions, right? Where we live in a dimension that is predicated on certain understandings, that we are liquid crystal, that our bodies are part of the environment and sensing it all the time. And there's
Mhm.
lots of
Yes.
research to back that up. And that's the world we live in. And we can hang out in the other world as needed. Um, but the more time we spend in ours and the more we network and create um, connections across the world virtually and then bring them into real life, meeting up in person, the stronger that our version of reality becomes. And at a
Yes.
certain point, it'll tip over. And I really feel like just in the past few weeks in the United States, who knows what's going to happen? Nothing's done. But the conversation has shifted. The potential of people who are create policy and make decisions has flipped so completely that you know I was totally resigned to living in this dimension with you and with the people and
Hmm.
like we'll have our own
Yeah.
world and the other world won't care. And now I'm like, I don't actually know what's going on anymore because the person who is nominated to run health in the United States is on the record saying that, non-native EMFs cause brain damage and we need to look at vaccines and we need to get glyphosate out and we need to get fluoride out of the water. And it's like 1 month ago, that was a radical dissident position.
Exactly.
And now all of a
Exactly.
sudden, it's in the New York Times like every day.
And people are not taking it well either, though. That's like me reading my Facebook comments. It's what those people think of the information I'm putting out there to a certain extent. Like, a lot of people are not ready for it. A lot of people aren't ready to hear this because, and this is how it was explained to me, you know, when I realized that this system had damaged my child, almost irreparably. We've tried to do a lot to help her, but there's certain things, certain bells that can't be unrung. Um, I don't put anything out of the realm of possibility. So I don't want to say that, but significant issues, that have been life changing. When I had to come to the realization that it was something that I had done because I thought that I was supposed to do that, I struggle with guilt. I struggle with severe depression. I literally almost tried to drink myself to death because I realized that that didn't have to happen. And when people have to come through that realization that they've been in this system and they've been, you know, raising their kids and their family in this certain paradigm, they have to reckon with that part of themselves. Maybe they don't have the same consequences that I've had, my family's had, but there might be other consequences that they say, wow, this wasn't necessarily an accident. This wasn't by chance. This wasn't bad luck. This was a result of these things that are now being brought out, that they are harmful, that there is a problem here. And so that's a hard emotional thing, I think, for people to have to go through, because I still, even to this day, all these years later, have that hang inside where I'm like, God, just wish that hadn't, but you can't go back and change certain things. But I think that that is part of it with people, that they're kind of in somewhat of a religion. I think that science, our regular science, has become a religion that you just don't question, even though there is no science that's ever settled. It's all theoretical. There's flaws in every study. You know, people have to kind of be willing to step outside of that and deal with internally the emotions that are going to arise as a result of that. And that's not an easy thing for people at all. A lot of people are becoming aware of the impact of minerals on our cellular hydration and energy processes of the body. They are literally indicated everywhere, and having a mineral imbalance can contribute to poor sleep, low energy, muscle cramps, and so many other problems. But what a lot of people don't understand is that taking exogenous minerals can actually cause issues. For example, adding a lot more sodium into your diet can push down your potassium levels, and adding zinc exogenously to your body can push down your copper levels, and vice versa. So, how do you know what minerals you actually need? I'm a huge fan of the Upgraded Formula's hair tissue mineral analysis. You can use code YOGI to save 10% on the test or anything on their site. And I highly recommend getting a consultation so someone can walk you through that test. Oftentimes, what comes back is not something that is easy to interpret on your own. But a mineral test using your hair is going to show what's been going on in your body over the last 60 to 90 days, whereas a blood test is only going to show a snapshot of time. I'm a really big fan of this hair tissue mineral analysis from Upgraded Formulas, along with a consultation. You can get yours by following the link in the show notes and using the code YOGI for 10% off the test and consultation or anything on the Upgraded Formulas website. A lot of people are quick to talk about the benefits of sunlight, but what gets often missed in the conversation is the benefit of darkness and the importance of protecting yourself from blue and green light after sunset. That is why I choose Viva Rays as my go-to source for protecting my circadian rhythms. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% off at Viva Rays. Now, you may have seen some of these studies popping up. I call them fear mongering about blue blockers not being effective. And that is a partial truth, because when you use blue blockers that are clear or that have not been tested with a spectrometer to actually block what they say they do, they will not protect your circadian rhythms. And they are not catching those key wavelengths that you need to be blocking in order for your body to be able to repair, for you to make melatonin, which is a master antioxidant. And artificial light at night has been in the scientific literature extensively linked to a host of hormonal cancers, obesity, diabetes, and all sorts of metabolic issues. That again is why I choose Viva Rays as my go to source for protecting my circadian rhythms to allow my body to get adequate darkness at night. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% over at Viva Rays, and you can actually trust that they block the frequencies of light that they say they do. Thanks to Viva Rays for sponsoring today's podcast.
No, it's really not. And, Sarah, I feel for you, and you have been so courageous in your choices of how to move forward from that like extraordinarily painful experience, right? And it's even more painful when the choice was laid out as something that was a good thing to do. Like, this is what
Right. This is
responsible
the right.
parents do. You don't
Yes.
tick these boxes, you're a bit of a whack job who doesn't care
Right.
for children live or die.
Right.
So tick the boxes. And then if something happens, it's like, oh no, you're crazy, right? Like, it's an absolute,
Right.
I mean, gaslighting doesn't even cover it, right? Like, it's
No.
an absolutely soul destroying situation that is
Mm-hmm.
occurring. Because
Yeah.
at the very least, if you have informed consent, you get to make that choice. And at
Right.
the very least, to have acknowledgement from uh, from the people who required that choice, that it
Mm-hmm.
had this consequence.
Right.
And the way the system is set up, and I think this is why it's going to crumble so quickly, because that is not a that is not coming from a place of strength, right? Like, the
Mm-mm.
minute enough people see what's going on, it falls apart. And something that's strong, it's like, if you see what's going on, you might say, okay, well, I don't choose that, but it will stay in place because it's still a valid choice. But the
Mm-hmm.
way that citizens are treated by the medical establishment is, and not like by individual doctors, who I really believe
No, I
most
think
of
that
them
they get
have their
into things to
hearts.
help. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's this
It's the system.
establishment, the
Mhm.
bureaucracy, the system, which has no soul. It has no there's not any one person. It's just a series of bureaucrats protecting itself. And it's causing a lot of harm on a lot of levels. So, somebody might come into this by going to see a therapist to resolve their relationship with a parent. And that brings us enough of a sense of safety to start to look at other issues. Like, everything, as we know, in the quantum field is all connected. So we never know where the healing is going to come from. But, you know, I don't like to say the names of politicians, because I think that even a
I
name
know.
has like uh,
Polarizing.
yeah, it has like an energetic imprint that will trigger a certain response.
Totally.
But I will say that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., um, I think he's a true hero, and he's maybe the only person I can think of in my experience who got into politics and I believe still has his soul. Um, and when you were sharing your story, Sarah, I was thinking about how he got into the health arena because he was an environmental lawyer. And I
Mm-hmm.
heard him tell this story on a podcast. He had the Kennedy name. He had cleaned up the Hudson River. He was a hero in many ways. Everything was beautiful and lovely. He'd recovered from alcoholism. Like, it was all good. And these moms showed up at one of
Yep.
his talks,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I'm thinking of you. It was like a
Yep.
version of you showed up at a talk and said, "You have to help us." And he was like, "No, I'm an environmental lawyer. I don't do health." And they were like, "Nobody else will listen." And this woman drove to his house and
I
unloaded boxes
remember.
of documents, right? And was like,
Mm-hmm.
please read these. And then if you want to say no, but please read them.
Mm-hmm.
And and he read them, and obviously he
He could never go
agreed
back.
to take up their cause, but it at huge personal cost. So the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual strength of that man, uh, to, you know, he does what all the politicians say they do, but they don't, which was like he stood up for people who had no voice
Mm-hmm.
for no other reason than it was the right thing to do. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he now may have some degree of power in the world to create policy is, to me, just, I don't know. I never expected to see that in my lifetime, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I think it's a huge vindication to you and to the moms, to all the
Yeah.
moms whose children have been harmed by
Yeah.
forced medical interventions.
Yeah. And I mean, I can only speak for myself, but we're tired. I'm tired. And this whole um everything being drug out and talked about has been exhausting because,
Yeah.
there's no recourse for my daughter. She will
Yeah.
live with me forever. Her life is forever changed, is devastating. And so I've been like, my husband's very energized by the whole thing, but me, I've just kind of been exhausted by the whole thing because then I see all the fighting about it and people trying to discredit and people still, even after all this evidence, wanting to say it's not real. And I go back to what I said because they're going to have to contend with their own demons around this. And it's tough. So I'm hopeful. I'm definitely hopeful for the future. I still don't trust anybody in political power. I'm grateful that the conversation's out there. I'm grateful that there's finally discussion, but I'm a skeptical. I'm a
Yeah.
skeptic. I don't trust anyone. But I'm hopeful. And yeah, I do hope there will be some changes that come about because of this. So yeah, it's a lot. I know there's probably people listening. It's a loaded conversation. It's a loaded, there's a lot going on right now, and it is very heavy. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
And my question is, right, like, if this is a hard conversation to listen to, like, what for you, like, why is that? I don't mean you,
Hmm.
Sarah, I mean somebody,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like, this is what it means to be alive.
Hmm.
This is what it means to be human, and this is what it means to be a grown-up. We look at uncomfortable things and figure it out and move forward and cultivate our discernment and cultivate our ability to find other people to trust and follow their lead and cultivate our ability to sense bullshit and cultivate
Hmm.
our ability to say, something doesn't smell right here.
Right.
And if we shut down every time we feel that discomfort and we avoid the conversation and we
Yeah.
unsubscribe from the podcast and we write the person off, we are not fully living.
No, no, we're not. And that's what drives me crazy about a lot of the mainstream. It's funny. I saw this, just a side note. I saw this post the other day and it said, and I'm a proud Gen X by only about 6 months. But as a Gen X is the only generation that is old enough to know that TikTok is basically complete bullshit. This is our third time using that word in the podcast. And that the mainstream news at CNN and Fox are also bullshit. Like, we're in that generation where we know that. I'm sure there's some, because I get classified as an elder millennial as well. So I think that they can fall in there as well, but it's all nonsense. But uh to be in that club, you shut things down, you write things off, it's a world of absolutes. And I don't know, if you live long enough, you have enough life experiences, you see that there is no absolute when it comes to your health, when it comes to how to live your life. There's always a conversation, there's always nuance, and there's always more to learn. Like I said with science, it's just become a religion. Our mainstream science is a religion. And I had a really interesting conversation with Dr. William, I think uh, Bernstead is his last name, or Banks. I've totally mispronounced that. Bankstead, I think. He was on my podcast. I just interviewed him the other day. And he said he's a skeptic, and not a believer. A believer is somebody that takes the word of science and takes it as an absolute. A skeptic is someone who's willing to say, maybe that's true, maybe it's not true, but I'm willing to actually explore it. And I'm like, I like that. I think that's
Yeah,
how we need to be. Um, and understand there is no science necessarily that's ever quote unquote settled. It's impossible. There's always a room for possibility, you know?
absolutely. I love the skeptics. Like when I'm investigating a topic that I don't know enough about to form my own opinion, I'll go and I'll read some absolutist and then I'll go and find the skeptic and see
Mm-hmm.
where they're poking holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I follow a couple of people on Twitter who are like hardcore materialists, right? Like if you can't if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And I like them because then I'm like, okay, well, that's where their line is. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
It takes all kinds, but the thing is, even though they're hardcore materialists, they're still curious.
Mm-hmm.
They're still looking.
Yeah, I think that's important. I'm just not going to take anybody's word for something. And I've seen enough things happen that I know that this black and white looking way of looking at health is not it doesn't hold across all situations. It doesn't hold across multiple people, and doesn't have any nuance of just saying this is good, this is bad. The body
Yeah.
is much more intelligent than we give it credit for. And that's why I love what you're doing and educating practitioners and empowering them to bring this to clients, to bring this information to the people who need it, who are ready for it. You have to be ready for it in order, I think, for it to really be effective. You have to be ready for it. You have to be open to it, honestly.
Yes, I think so. And as we were saying before, more and more practitioners are getting to that place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's about developing the lens through which to look at things. So it's not like, a list of protocols. It's
Right.
understanding how to become, like a quantum health detective, right? Like what you've
Mm-hmm.
done. It's like you learned the foundations of the science. You're like, okay, so then where does that lead me? And then where does that lead me? And in the area that you've chosen to focus on, right? You've been able to um, put together all of these clues that are laid out and create a body of work that is, I think, incredibly unique and incredibly powerful. And that's the power of stepping into a new paradigm. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses with an enhanced view of things. It's like a microscope and a telescope and an energy finder and all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
And that layers on to all of the expertise and wisdom that people already have, which is totally valid. It just is this new way to look at the world,
Mm-hmm.
this new lens through which to look.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about Quantum Biology Collective, you, Carrie, Dr. Pugh, we all are working with people and talking with people on a very daily basis, regular basis. Carrie and I and Sarah have all these little conversations, and my work continues to change. My work continues to develop as I do it with so many different people. You know, my leptin program, I developed it back in 2022 after the program was born after going through the QBC in the Quantum Biology Collective in 2021, and then implementing that on myself and with my clients for a full year. Then after a year of it, I developed a program because I was pregnant and I said, I can't keep doing one-to-ones. I'm going to have a baby and I need to put my energy towards my family. And so I created the Leptin Reset. And then just 2 years later now, this past September, I re-recorded the entire thing and added so much more to, I mean, it's literally like $1,000 course, but I haven't changed the price just because I want to keep it accessible to everyone. But I have basically added to and edited so many things after working with people another 2 years and seeing like, how does this information work for somebody in Texas versus somebody in Canada? How does this work for someone who's in their 20s versus someone who's in their 60s or 70s? You know, there's just so many different shades of, and why does this work for this one person, but not for this person? And having to keep learning myself. I think we're always learning. And I think we're always seeing how things like the nervous system come into play. The impact of resonance and coherence, I think, is so much bigger than anybody understands. That's what I'm coming to more and more. And really what I learned a lot in the QBC, but I don't think I could understand it at the time, was just the whole impact of water in the body. That's so fascinating, and how that is really a crucial part of our health. You know, the exclusion zone water and resonance and all, and coherence. And that's not something you can learn from PubMed.
Yeah,
Necessarily.
no,
It's not there. It's just not there.
no,
I mean, there is
not at
actually some
all.
of Emoto's work that's been replicated in double-blind placebo.
Mhm.
So there, you know, there's some research that you can gather from that, but seeing it the way that
Yes,
we
no,
do
I mean,
is
there's great
different.
information in there,
Mm-hmm.
but the skill that you're articulating is this detective, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think um, thinking of, if you're a practitioner, thinking of yourself as a detective more than
Mm-hmm.
as a clinician sometimes is the framing. And that's what you're describing. It's like you learn something and then you look at it and then it grows and then you circle back. It's like, oh, and now a layer that was there that you didn't see before that you now see becomes added. And instead of looking at just someone's food or just someone's blood, you're looking at their
The
home,
person,
their habits, their
their whole
life,
environment.
their
Yes.
everything about them becomes relevant. And so
Yes.
instead of having a very micro, narrow focus of how to evaluate somebody, quote unquote, is like you've opened up the whole world is now
Mhm.
information for you to understand what's going on with that person.
Yep.
It's really cool. And then
It
and
is
then when
cool.
people work with a practitioner who acts like a detective, they learn
Hmm.
how to be a detective for themselves, right?
Hmm.
And I just talked to Irene Lyon last week, and everyone I
Um,
talk to, right, it's like really comes down to being able to listen to our bodies, which is a
mhm.
skill that we were not, most of us, not taught to cultivate. So
Mm-mm.
working with a practitioner who's listening to us teaches us how to listen to ourselves, and on the virtuous cycle goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's everywhere. You know, I learned it in the Quantum Biology Collective, and I continue to learn through listening to people, through talking daily conversations I have in my community with people. And we have Zoom meetings 2 or 3 times a week that I'm talking with people. Um, and I went through Dr. Tom Cowan's New Biology Collective, and that's a lot of New Biology curriculum. I'm sorry. That's a lot of what we learned in there, really, was that, and what Dr. Cowan really talks about. A lot of people can kind of get in the weeds with the things that he says because it is so dramatically different,
Yeah.
so dramatically different than our typical science. But um, what I really took from Dr. Cowan the most from that New Biology curriculum was that you talk to the person. That what's the story?
Yeah.
The woman with the fibromyalgia. when did this happen? What happened in your life? What was going on when these things started happening? And that's why it's so hard when people go into my comments and say, I have this problem and this isn't working and this isn't, and it's like, I can't, sometimes I can't, sometimes I can look right at a comment and know the problem. I know the problem. Um, but a lot of times I just say, well, I can't just give you an answer from your comment. We need a, we need a full
Yeah.
conversation. You have a whole
Yes.
entire life, your imprint of your environment, the signals, everything is impacting your health. And I'm learning more every day, from my own life, my own experience, my own medically complicated, so to speak, child continues to teach me because I'm open to it. I continue to ask and to seek for information, sometimes on my knees crying at night, like, what do it, please help me send the right information, the right person, the right thing. And there's always the deal, like, if we can figure it out for her, I'll tell everyone, I promise. Like those are my prayers. A lot of the time my husband and I sit at the table together in the evenings and after the kids are in bed and we pray together. And it doesn't have to be to your standard Christian God, it can be if that's the what is resonating for you and is your, but a prayer and asking. And that's one of the things that we always go to prayer, like when we're in that place of like, we're in this particular crisis, please show us, send us, like give us, make it obvious. And I always say, and I'll tell people, I'll tell people, I promise. Um, and then more is revealed every time. Maybe I sound completely insane right now, but it's end of the year here. And I think people are
Yeah.
maybe a little more open after this last year we've had to hearing things like this. Maybe not, maybe they'll hit unsubscribe, unfollow, and even block me. But
Well, I hope not, because you're explaining a wisdom practice, you're explaining a spiritual practice. So whether someone does that in the context of their religion,
Mhm,
right? The idea of opening up, if you don't want to say God, you say the quantum field, right? Like the idea of opening yourself up to receiving wisdom
mhm,
that's not currently clear to you is a profoundly important practice
mhm.
that we would all benefit from doing every day. And often, for me, I've been doing that lately too, because I've had a lot of decisions to make. And it's like my mental brain wants to be like, boop, boop, boop. And it's like, no, I got to open it up. I got to open it up. And we, have been gifted with situations where we are, the gift of desperation. We get down on our
Yeah.
knees and we ask for help.
Yep.
And if that doesn't land, I would invite, again, as I said, I would invite you to explore it anyway.
Hmm.
This is how we move forward,
Hmm.
and I do the same thing. I don't have the same challenge that you have with your beautiful daughter. Um, but it works anyway,
We all
God
have
wants to
challenges.
answer. God,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like I heard someone once saying her kind of vision was that we're all surrounded by, various types of energy guides and different things like that. And she said that she would like visualize them all like hanging around, like smoking cigarettes, being like, God, when are they going to call on us to do something? I'm so bored. Listen, this is all metaphor, okay? I think sometimes it helps to visualize things for fun.
Sure.
Right. And when we open ourselves up and we're like, all right, help me. And then I'll notice, like I'll be, I was on a coaching call from the coaching program that I'm in, and someone will ask a question and I'm like, oh, that's what I needed to hear. And like the little clues will start popping up. I'll get an email from
Hmm.
someone's list that I didn't even remember I was on with
Hmm.
with saying something. And it's like, oh, that's the lead. Follow that lead,
Mhm.
follow that clue, see where it goes. You know,
Yeah,
life is fun if we are open
we
to it
allow.
that way.
Yeah. And I think there's a place of, for me, what a theme that's been coming up a lot is that I need to make more space and I need to be more quiet and more still so that I have the opportunity to listen. Because I'm very much like, do the checklist, do the strategy, do the protocol. I need to be in the doing all the time and very much in that
Mhm.
masculine. And there's one thing I've learned this year in particular is that that's not sustainable. I would that it's exhausting to constantly be in the doing and the protocol and the strategy. And there's a point where we have the things that we've done and we have to be quiet and we have to be still. And yeah, the messages come through in the strangest ways. I was in my sauna the other day, and I put my phone on speakerphone so it's not, and put it on the floor. I don't have the Wi-Fi on the sauna. I try to keep it as non-EMF friendly as possible. But randomly, this sermon from this preacher in Savannah, Georgia, of all places, that I don't even know why YouTube decided to suggest this video to me. It was the strangest thing. Uh, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. I don't listen to sermons. I haven't been to church and I don't know how many is the last time I went was probably someone's funeral. Like, and that, I do want to go back. But very bizarre. But that sermon from this pastor in Savannah, Georgia, of all places, was exactly what I needed to hear the other day. And it was more on this wavelength of listening and and just being open. And I think a lot of people are more in that receptive mode now, and ready for this. So I'm excited to see what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. This is like just my totally woo theory and not at all backed by science, but I do think sometimes our consciousness can change the algorithm on these on our
I
social media
do.
feed. Like I have
I
had
do.
things pop up and I'm like, how did it even know? Like that isn't even, it's not even just reading my emails and listening
Mm-hmm.
to me. Like I was only thinking about this and
Mm-hmm.
here it is. Right. I
Yeah.
do yeah, it's
Yeah.
just my little
Yeah.
my little 2 cents.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you just yeah, there's a lot and it's easy to feel like overwhelmed. And I think like you were saying, like you're tired and like I feel that too. But then sometimes it's that fatigue that forces the rest that brings the
Mm-hmm.
insight
Mm-hmm.
that creates a new way forward.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe one day I will not do things out of a place of being tired or in pain. I hope.
I know.
But
I mean, and that's yeah. It's every year I'm like, oh, if I can organize or get help or outsource or do this, I'm like, why
Mhm.
didn't I do that sooner? Well, I don't know. I didn't.
I wasn't in a position. Yeah. Yeah. You just weren't ready. And that's human nature, I think. That's the crux of just being a
Yeah.
human, honestly. And you see how messy it is, and just have compassion and empathy for yourself and for others who aren't quite there yet. So it's but it's exciting because I think there are people that are getting to that place. And one thing that has definitely been transformative and was very positive for me and continues to be a positive force in my life is the community that you've created with Quantum Biology Collective. And I was so excited to get my board certification back in, I guess
That's
it was,
right. You were one
yeah,
of the very first people. Congratulations. I don't think
thank
I've said
you.
that in person to you yet.
Yeah.
That's a that's amazing.
Yeah. It's very cool, because I just I don't know, I was never a very like studio. I just really wasn't interested in the curriculum of school.
Yeah.
I hated it. I just like, do I really have to do this? And there's value of being disciplined and going through college and all of that. But it just, to me, the system was never appealing. And now I kind of look back at it. I'm like, oh, that's why I just thought it was all nonsense.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, there's value in it, but this information is something that I've been always drawn to, like a moth to a flame. It's just like, wow, okay, this is the learning that I've always wanted to do. This is the science I've always wanted to explore, because I think we have this intuition about light, about nature, about water, about coherence. Inherently, we do, but the modality, the pathway of learning it is not readily available. So I think what's really cool about what you're doing, what you've done, is to create this space for practitioners and people who want to learn and dive deeper into this information to go on that learning track. So it's really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, and that was really the goal. I mean, we started out talking about the paradigm shift, and it's like we want to decentralize things because, to your
Mm-hmm.
point, I think the way we've structured education is extremely off-putting, especially
Mm-hmm.
to the most curious, brightest people, right? Like they don't want to do 4 years of straight classes. It's like you learn something and then you apply it and then you circle back and learn something else. So a decentralized approach where you can take, the certification in applied quantum biology, and then it's like, oh, and then maybe you go study with Irene Lyon, or maybe you go learn a new modality, or you layer on all of these things, and to have that option, right? Like we had to make it ourselves, and we are making it ourselves, and I think it's attracting in all kinds of people who have amazing talent and potential and intuitive capabilities and intelligence, who were not being served
Right.
by the traditional education system.
Mm-hmm.
And we need all of you. I mean, I think of all the people that you've reached by choosing to do this. And we need all the people. And if the only option are the people who went through the mainstream stuff, which is totally cool. We have doctors and, come as come into the program as well. But if you feel, if you're someone who's like, I don't know, like I was never a good student, or I wasn't this, or I wasn't that, like if you feel called to do it, do it.
Mm-hmm.
The world needs you. And there are, every single person in the world right now needs some kind of one-on-one health coach or practitioner or
Mm-hmm.
somebody to support them in some capacity. It, we just do. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know anybody who doesn't. And so the more of us, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And you're all needed, and you will all find your way, and you will express whatever you learn and apply whatever you learn in your own unique capacity. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Sarah. Don't shrug it off because it's not what it's not in your history, or you have an idea of yourself and it doesn't fit. We ought to move forward. We need all hands on deck. And also,
Agreed.
if you're a person who just needs help and your life is full and you're like, I don't want to be a practitioner, please work with one. Please. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot, in all
Well, there's a
likelihood,
trickle
heal
down.
yourself on social media.
No,
You
no,
need,
it's very
need to
difficult.
take the next step.
That's a hard thing about my comments, is that I can't give someone the answers that they need over an Instagram comment. I do my best to put out so much free information. This podcast, I have like 12 or 13 free ebooks, and I do my best to put as much free stuff out there for people. And I get emails almost every day from people who thank me for the free stuff and that it does help them to make amazing changes in their life. But if you are someone who really needs someone to kind of hold your hand and you're having a difficult time with just applying free information, then please do. Because there, like I was saying, there's a trickle down effect. You work on you, you get healthier, people around you are going to see that and be attracted to it. Maybe if they're ready. But we always
Yeah,
say attraction, not promotion. You know,
absolutely.
I could never hear anyone that was screaming at me about how unhealthy the things I was doing were at the time and how messed up. You know, I can't hear that fanatical voice, but I can see someone who's radiating health and radiating happiness and say, I want what they have. I want that. And how what did they do to get there? What are they doing on a daily basis? What does their life look like to have that? And that's motivating, I think. And so you may not be able to change the people around you. My husband just started wearing, I keep saying my husband just started wearing blue blockers after 5 years of me wearing blue but now he thinks they're amazing and loves them. But it took 5 years. And so we can't always like get everyone to jump to that wavelength, but we can
Yeah,
only change
no,
ourselves. And yeah.
we, it's true. And that's why I think, this particular moment in time is so interesting because we do have the internet. So we can
Yes.
find people who are exactly where we are, the people who are our peers are on our journey, people a little ahead of us who can mentor us, people coming up behind us that we can you know, pass down to. And then we don't need to bug the people in our lives, in our real lives as much because we have the community that we need
Mm-hmm.
to um to share, and then we
Mm-hmm.
become magnetic, we become the attractors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been really interesting. We'll see
I know.
what
So
comes out of
funny.
the
I'm
conversation.
like, yeah. No, it was really interesting, and it's just really good to talk. I like
Yeah.
to l- allow people just to hear me talk sometimes and not be in full interviewer mode and
Mm-hmm.
freewheel it a little bit. We're all in the soup, and the temperature is being turned up
Significantly.
on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So we got to laugh and talk and
Yes. We need community. We need each
pray
other.
and hang out.
Yeah, we really do. We really do. And you're starting a new cohort of the QBC that we've kind of mentioned multiple times through the conversation. That is what,
Yes.
January the 9th, did you say?
Yes. So registration's open now. It's open through January 9th, and the next cohort will run in April 2025. So there's one that kicks off January 2025. And we're actually spinning out from the QBC, the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. We're in the
Mm.
process of applying for a nonprofit designation. So that will be separate from the QBC, a standalone educational institution for health and wellness practitioners who want to learn how to clinically apply the principles of quantum biology. And then the phase 2 plan would be to be able to fundraise to um, fund research on circadian rhythms and light. We'll start there. Who knows where it'll go? Um, and to create a body of research that uh, that we need. So many times I hear you and the other faculty being like, "Oh, well, we think this is what's happening, but no one's studying it." So we want to create an organization that will allow for that type of research to happen, coming out of the need of people working in the field, not from an academic perspective,
Yes.
um, from the perspective of like, what do we need? What would be really helpful to understand to best help people feel better?
Yeah. I love that. It's so important because, yeah, Carrie and I are always having conversations, Dr. Sarah, of are you seeing a lot of this in your community? Are you seeing a lot of this in your one-to-ones? And yeah, we see stuff and there's not necessarily literature to back that up. And so it's a process of learning and yeah, more
Right.
will be
Yeah.
revealed.
And so these are bringing up like the questions. Okay, here's the hypothesis, and then we
Mhm.
can start to figure out ways to test it and
Yeah.
create some. paperwork on it
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
world.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time, a lot of energy, but definitely exciting. And if you're listening on my podcast, I'll have the links to QBC down in the show notes, and I know Meredith will on her podcast as well. And yeah, this has been a fun, interesting conversation. I'm sure we'll be having more of these in the future. Anything else you want to wrap with, Meredith?
No, I mean, I just want to remind people to trust themselves. And
Mhm.
if they have, if you have an inner urge to reach out to somebody, to work with somebody, to study something, to join a membership, to take a class, follow it.
Mhm.
Follow it. We don't have time to shrug off our impulses and shrug off our intuitive hits. This is not the moment to do that. Just go for it and see what happens.
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks for coming on and chatting today. It's been a great time.
Such a pleasure, Sarah. Always so good to see you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. Just a quick little reminder, this is not medical advice nor meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with a healthcare practitioner. And if you enjoy the show, please head on over to Apple or Spotify to leave the show up to a 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, please leave us a like, leave us a comment. I really appreciate you for being here, for listening to the show, and your support means the world to me as I continue to try to pull guests from around the world to bring you informative content to empower you to make decisions about your own health. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.